Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Dolan, as always, and I'm here to help local business owners get found, convert leads, stay ahead in the ever-changing world of digital marketing, search, and all that. Speaking of change, today we are diving into one of the hottest and I guess confusing topics too, which hopefully Victor here is going to shed some light on it for all of us. But one of the topics in the marketplace right now, which is AI and search, kind of, we're all familiar with Google search, maybe using AI to search, but these are kind of converging in a sense, but also there's some areas where they are divergent and different from each other. And Victor's going to help us break a lot of that down. There's been a massive surge of platforms offering AI abilities to use, but also like for search and for finding things, right? We've got Google AI, Google search, ChatGPT, Grok. There's a bunch of them. It's pretty fragmented. And Victor, I've kind of been telling people, I feel like this was almost years ago in SEO when there was more than just Google, right? There was other search engines, even go back to the early 2000s, Lycos, Excite. You couldn't just focus on Google. And we're kind of back in that a little bit, but for an entirely different reason. So to help us navigate this, and we'll get into some good questions here, we are talking with Victor Perez. Victor is the SEO director at On the Map, personally managed probably well over 1,000 legal SEO campaigns now at that point. I know that's like a good tagline that's always fun to hang on your hat or your head. So also we'll talk a little bit here, Victor, coming up. I think maybe a little bit later it makes more sense, but TrackRight, which is rank tracking and GeoGrid product that you're behind too. I'm super excited to kind of explore that and pick your brain a little bit there on why that's unique.
Sure.
And beneficial to everybody. But yeah, we've crossed paths at conferences before. You were on an episode of a previous podcast that I hosted, which was awesome. So I'm very happy to have you here today. Let's start. What are you hearing lately from clients when it comes to AI and search? What's kind of the vibe you're getting and maybe the confusion therein?
Sure. Yeah. So thanks for bringing me on again. So I guess that's a good place to start because that's kind of where it really matters to us, at least as marketers, where it's what are the clients worried about right now? Yeah. So the biggest worry is, are we going to lose any market share or any visibility, I guess? If you think about like the entire audience that you can capture organically, they're worried because they're spending so much money every month to make sure that they're very visible on at least Google search primarily, depending on the focus. Maybe you're also tracking the other platforms, but for them, it's really simple to just worry about Google. And like you said, in the past, there's been competition that's came at them before, but now they're worried that the amount of money that they're spending for visibility might start to dwindle away if people start to shift to a different platform.
Yeah.
So I guess going into that, I guess it's like a scary thought, but it is, like you said, it's something that's happened before. I know when Bing started their big advertising for their search platform, and, there were big lawsuits that Google had to face as far as being the default search engine for various devices. But, I guess Bing has its market share. Typically, I remind people about how the people that are using Windows, some sort of a Windows computer, and they're not very tech savvy, they'll go ahead and jump on just the first browser or the first search engine on the default browser, which is going to be Bing. Sure. So just because of that, they've been able to gain a really good amount of market share. But I guess the first point I make from this is you want to pay attention to the actual share that they're taking from commercial searches, commercial or informational that can lead to a conversion. And then, so I guess I'm wondering, have you heard yourself about different studies that have been done on this? Because I know I can point out at least one that was recently done just to kind of shed some light on this.
Yeah, I've definitely read a few different articles, but the one you shared in advance of this recording, I thought was really good. A lot of great graphics. We'll post it in the show notes for everybody to go check it out. If you want to dive into anything on that, but I've got another question here for you, maybe before we get super deep into the guts.
Yeah.
Everybody listening or watching, is going to be marketing managers, business owners, working on their visibility, trying to get found locally. Maybe if you could help us break down quick in your summarization here, what is for how not how these business owners and managers are using it, but how their prospects and their clients are using these. We talked about Bing there a little bit, but what do you see a big difference again in your mind for how the end user is using Google, Google with the AI, information embedded into it, or just going straight to a ChatGPT for search, whether it be through the app or things like this. Is there any insights you can share with the business owners and marketing managers on how their clients and prospects seem to be using these tools, and if there's any idiosyncrasies and differences, kind of like the Bing example that you gave there, which I thought was really good?
Yeah, so just a few days before we recorded this, Google gave their I/O presentation where they revealed, AI mode. And already, I think that's one of the things I told you before this is all these different things that are coming out also make it really difficult to kind of keep up unless you're somebody like us that has to be messing around with these tools every day. But I guess before I go into AI mode, which is like the newest that's come out, I guess I could say as to where we are right now, or the whole previous year leading up to this point, there has been a shift already in specifically informational queries. It appears, so I guess for context, right now I oversee data for maybe, I want to say like up to 300 different law firms right now across the US. So from this data, obviously we have to report on conversions and we have to look at also if any traffic or any conversions are coming through from ChatGPT. So what I can tell you is it can vary, but for smaller law firms, maybe like a solo attorney, somebody that's just focusing and is getting traffic from one city, I'm seeing up to like 30 to 40% of the informational traffic coming through, sorry. I'm seeing 30 to 40% of the leads that are being converted are coming from informational queries. So I want to start there, right? So out of all the leads that I see from the smaller law firms, there's a pretty significant portion. You could say at least like a quarter of your traffic, as long as you're putting up blog posts, informational content on your website, you're going to get a pretty significant portion of people converting from just an informational query. Okay, so why is that important? Because you want to divide your attention across people directly looking for a service, and people that are just researching first. So that's a really big one to pay attention to, because I know a lot of business owners and definitely a lot of lawyers that just don't care about the blog post because it doesn't seem like something that's going to convert and give them an ROI. But okay, so once you get that understanding of how important the informational queries are, out of the people, the very, very few people that have converted from ChatGPT across my clients, those are converting not off of somebody directly asking them for a lawyer, but it's people that are doing research. So that's kind of like the best insight I can give as to how it breaks down. Because for one, if you look at the actual market share of like commercial searches from ChatGPT, it's still like estimated to be like less than 1%. So even that is a fraction of what Bing produces right now.
Sure.
So that puts it into context, but also it means, hey, you should not be ignoring it, because there are just enough users now on ChatGPT that you should be paying attention to what queries you're showing up for. And the rest, so going now into, AI mode is coming out. So now the big question is, and this is a big question for Google too, as a giant corporation here, or segments of corporations, however they're split up now. But the big question is, what are users going to gravitate to? Because I guess Google's job is to be on top of the change. They don't want to be behind it. because if they lag behind what users prefer, then people like ChatGPT can end up taking over. So that's where the real danger is to Google and Google search and people like us that do organic marketing. So now so that brings us to what users prefer. So from what I can see, I would say, okay, probably nobody is being silly enough to just let AI decide who their lawyer should be. But there is a shift happening towards people getting used to these tools. So I guess I can leave it because a lot of this is now speculation. So bringing us now to this timeline and answering your question finally, I think we have to just be very on top of where people are starting to gravitate towards, what people are starting to prefer. And the best insight I can give to that right now is it's definitely not going to be overnight. People tend to have like a little bit of a progress of getting used to new ways to experience things. It's never very fast, or at least historically, it's never been just suddenly people are just going to let AI decide everything. Right. So yeah, but I feel like that's kind of like where we're at as far as our audiences that we have to be paying attention to.
Makes sense. Let me try to pick apart two things there from what you were saying. So if I'm hearing you correctly, or maybe I misinterpreted a little, but do you feel that, again, you're speaking kind of through the lens of legal, analytics and legal leads here, which, is a good indicator, but, there may be some niches out there that are different. But if a conversion happens through somebody who came from ChatGPT right now, at least, versus just a regular Google search, do you feel like they are researching more? They're trying to learn more instead of just pop up who's near me or whatever, right? Like the volume maybe isn't there, but maybe a little more educated, a little bit more ready to make that decision, a little bit further downstream. Does that seem accurate for what you're saying?
Yeah. So I've definitely heard a lot of people that are marketers, but are more so on the side of like understanding psychology or focusing on the psychology of things. One of the recent events I was at was SEO Week, which was in New York. And there was a lot of internal marketers, not just like agency owners, but internal marketers that have to think about these things and conversions and all of that for their large websites. The best thing that I'm picking up from everybody there, all of these experts that actually think about these things, is that if anything, like you might start to see traffic go down for informational queries. And that might, okay, so let's focus on just Google search. Even if people stay on Google search, you might still see people, or you might see less clicks coming through from informational queries. But if people are clicking less because they're using the AI overviews more, that would mean that the fewer clicks that you do have would have a higher conversion rate than what you've experienced in the past. Sure. So just off of that, definitely don't panic if you get less traffic. Obviously, you want to start monitoring your ranks. We monitor even some informational queries, only the ones that are like higher intent than others. But we do want to monitor ranks because you want to make sure, am I losing traffic because I lost a rank that was valuable? Or are we starting to see some of that shift, which I don't think you'll see month to month, but maybe year to year, we start to slowly see that little drain of traffic. And then obviously, if you're doing something like maybe e-commerce, you might start to experience that a little bit faster than somebody like local business.
Makes sense. Makes total sense.
And then I would say the same thing, even if you go to ChatGPT now. If you're researching, if you're spending a lot of your time making the decision, then that click should be more valuable than not.
Right. Yeah, you're ready. You're more in that place to make that decision. Again, you're talking very informational query based, right? There's research, there's fact finding. You're not just looking for the local coffee shop here. Do you think, or I shouldn't say, do you think? Just to explain to everybody, like you're saying, you may not get that click and that traffic. You're getting that AI overview or some version of it. people are still, in that sense, people are still reading your content, consuming your information you're providing, right? Even if they're not clicking to your website, if it's just presented in Google AI overview, let's say, right? You're still seeing this information. Hopefully your brand is mentioned. Hopefully there's some kind of tie-ins there. Whereas before they would have clicked on your website from that link in Google and then read that blog, right? Or read that information. Now they're maybe still seeing all that, but they're just not visiting your website. Is that accurately what you're saying? Just so everybody can really parse that out.
Right, exactly. And I would imagine that as far as the factors that are used to weigh the quality of your page, obviously it matters a lot if you're ranking on page one, especially towards the top of it. It matters a lot if people are bouncing off or ending, or it matters if Google can tell that they weren't satisfied with your page, that they had to go to a different one before they ended their session. So if you think about how this could affect things at a large scale, if the clicks are more valuable and show and are a better picture of intent because they're only arriving once they're ready to make a transaction or reach out, then it would only be better information for Google to have in their machine learning algorithm for weighing out quality. So it's really, and that's really why, you might get people, especially people that have been doing SEO for longer, that would say, it's not too much of a change. It's still going in the same direction that we've been going. It's just the way that it looks is a little bit different. And we have to pay attention to if people end up changing along with these, innovations. Because obviously there's a level of these giant companies have to experiment. They have to see. It might not work. AI mode might not be good. We might hate it, but it doesn't matter. For their investors, they have to be trying, because if they discover a better way to search, then that's obviously, that's how you maintain your value or grow it. If you're a large company like Google or ChatGPT, who's obviously trying to innovate as much as they can.
If you go on out to illuminatelocal.com, look for the yellow button at the top, free SEO audit. It gives you a score of your page against whatever keyword you're trying to optimize and rank for. And it's going to give you the highlights of where your site stands in terms of local SEO factors like the GBP, the local directories, content, things like that. And also show you where some holes are, show you what's good. It's fast, it's free, use it over and over, and gives you a pretty good punch list for your clear directions on what your next steps are. Again, just head over to illuminatelocal.com, look for the free SEO audit button, and leverage that. Yeah, they're not going to just sit on their heels and let the trillions of dollars escape them, right? So, all right, one more thing I want to circle back to this same topic here still. Again, for everybody out there, managers, owners, running their business, be it legal or otherwise, how can they identify? Maybe it's just Google Analytics and you can help people see how to tag and stuff here, but how do they know where this traffic is coming from? How do they know that this is ChatGPT traffic to their website, right? Not how much is shown in the AI overviews and things like this, right? But the actual clicks from said platform to their site. How can they know?
Right. And that's a good point where you should probably focus more on if you got clicks than trying to figure out rankings for the new AI platforms, because I know AI overviews, at least Ahrefs is getting pretty good at showing you when you show up for one of those. But anything else as far as AI rank tracking is just there's not very good data. So yeah, definitely focus on, did I actually get a click? Did somebody come over and convert? So for sure, if you haven't already, set up Google Analytics. So simply tagging your website and connecting Google Analytics without any other setup, at least you can already go back and see referral sources and see if ChatGPT provided you some traffic. So the very least, set that up, just connect it, just enable it. But I would say, even if you're just a business owner, you're trying to figure it out yourself, I would say at least try searching on YouTube, maybe examples of how to do custom conversion tracking, custom conversions using Google Tag Manager, because then not only do you see what traffic you got, but you also want to try and set it up to where it says it starts counting conversions if somebody submits a contact form, submits like a chat widget lead, or they click to call on any phone number that you have anywhere on the website. That's the other one. That's like the minimum that you should do. And that at least sets you up to, if not now, later you can bring somebody on to help you analyze your information, your data.
100%. Oh, that's perfect. And I think it's important for everybody to know, right? Like, this isn't just you're going out and testing it yourself to see if you're showing up and, would you click whatever you look at the actual data. What are the patterns? Because I think something else you said that people shouldn't miss is this is evolving, and it won't be fast. You're not going to be able to pull up said report and be like, oh, wow, look what happened last month. This will continue to erode, let's say, just from overall maybe Google traffic on your site and start to separate out. We keep talking ChatGPT as an example, right? But there's a handful of good AI platforms that are out there right now today. Who knows a year from now if there's going to be anybody new in the mix, right? Or any consolidation. But yeah, the time is now to start tracking and looking at this stuff so people get a handle on it, because it is changing. I think there's no denying that, right? It's not a if, it's a now or a when, if you will. So I don't know if you have anything else to add on that as we're thinking through it. Otherwise, this might be a great time to switch over to the study by J.R. Oakes we're talking about.
I think this. No, I think I guess that was like my next thought is, it sounds really scary because in a way, I guess it is, change is always scary. But right now, it's like, definitely take action to track. Definitely try to get your own data. And if you have to pay somebody, hire somebody just to get that set up for you, definitely do that because it's a good time to do that. But don't freak out just yet, right? We're still trying to see how things are going to change. And even if they do change, that doesn't mean that Google is going to scrap the algorithm. They're like multi-billion-dollar algorithm they put together. Right. So along those lines, I guess it gets into one study that I saw. So there was a J.R. Oakes, and I know he said he had it fact-checked by Patrick Stocks from Ahrefs. And he presented a whole bunch of data at SEO Week. So I had reached out to them just to get the slides. So I know I linked that to you in case anybody wants to look at the full thing. But basically, they did a study, pretty large study too, very large sample size, trying to look at essentially, should we be worried? Are we moving into a ChatGPT type of platform where all of a sudden things are harder to discover? It's harder to discover small businesses. Is that going to happen? That's kind of one of the biggest worries. But so far, if anything, it looks like ChatGPT has a very good amount of, I can't remember how they phrased it, but the discovery, the amount of different types of queries and the amount of businesses in total that it would show off to people is still something real, if not better than Google, at being able to kind of showcase a wider variety of different brands. So on that note, at least so far with their development, don't be scared that all of a sudden it's only going to be the giant conglomerates or just the giant, players in your industry that are going to be shown, because that appears to be kind of like a big focus from those developers that are building these platforms. And I mean, it makes sense. You're not going to win over market share from Google search if you're not trying to do something better than Google search. But for now, honestly, if you take a look at the study, but it doesn't look like there's much of a difference between the types of rankings that you would be getting on Google than you would be getting on ChatGPT. And you can try to check yourself with your specific business. This is how I would check anything that you're top ranking for on Google. See if that's already showing up within the top positions on ChatGPT. Because for me, when I went through all the different informational queries that I've been stuck on, like number one for many months, those tend to also be within the top three of what ChatGPT is trying to suggest. So already, there is a difference. Obviously, there's an added amount of logic placed into the rankings before it serves it to you. So there is a difference, but at its core, it's still following the same thing. If not, it's just kind of using Google search results for now. Because I mean, if you had to really quickly build this platform, wouldn't it be really easy to just pull from Google and just leverage what they've done? So
I'd
for
like
now,
I've talked to plenty of people, Victor. Sorry to interrupt you there, but
No, no.
I think it's worth highlighting that like Google indexes your website, right? It literally scans it, if you will, saves a copy. It doesn't save a copyright. It digests the information, saves that to be served back up in results later. Not that ChatGPT or anybody else doesn't have the capacity to maybe start indexing and everything else, but effectively, and I'm being super simplistic here for any data scientists listening here, but it's doing the research for you, right? It's not pulling from its own index database of results and rankings. It's going to Google, maybe Google, Bing, and Yelp, whatever, and doing 3 different searches and then giving you these results. So yeah, if you want to rank high, quote unquote, air quotes here, in ChatGPT, make sure you're ranking high in Google, right? And I think your study kind of corroborates a lot of those important, not your study, I'm sorry, the one that you shared with me that we're going to link in the show page, corroborates a lot of that. If you really look at the metrics and dive into it, not without some differences, to your point, it's not just pulling straight off Google, off the SERP, but obviously it's a research tool for it to give you the answer that you're looking for, right? So.
Yeah. And, if it was your job to build it, I mean, I would think it's probably a whole lot cheaper to just pull via API on every search platform.
Yeah.
And then just add your logic to make it better. But anyways, there's definitely, people are saying, look at within ChatGPT, you'll start to notice there are local pack results that look very much like the map pack. So it looks like it is at least primarily, and that doesn't mean that it puts all its weight on it, but primarily it looks like it would pull from Bing places to serve your map, your local pack type of listing. But that also doesn't mean that if you're not on Bing, you don't show up. Because I do have clients that we did not put them on Bing, they still rank, or we also have clients that are on Bing, but what ChatGPT is pulling from their local pack is different. Because just like data aggregators and citations, guess what? It will pull from other sources, and if it's a very high traffic site that has your name wrong on it, it might just overwrite what you just put in from Bing. So you can see how, different platform, but almost the same type of situation with how third-party data is handled, where you have to have it kind of accurate everywhere if you want the best effect and you don't want anything to conflict. So I would say definitely focus on Bing. And like you said, if they are just pulling Google API, Bing API, Yahoo, whatever, then, hey, make sure you're setting up at the very minimum, like go on Bing, set up webmaster tools, whatever SEO plugin you use on your website, they all should have the feature to connect to Index Now, which will index all your pages immediately over on Bing. So definitely, make use of that. But for now, that's kind of what the rankings look like. There's just a little bit of logic that's placed in. And of course, depending on what you're putting in as your query, it's going to deviate from what you might see on Google if you're just putting in a few keywords for your search.
Right. And we should say, at least it's suspected, it's highly unique to every person searching. Not that Google is not different for you and me, right? If we did the same search right now, 2 different places, 2 different histories, we're going to get some differences, but also a lot of similarities. With ChatGPT or AI too, it's even more so tailored to you, correct?
Or it is biased. So at least right now, because they try to apply patches when things go a little bit too far in one way, but right now it is super biased in that if you sign up with an account on ChatGPT and let's say you're doing some sort of work, you're trying to, summarize things or change things on a spreadsheet in bulk or something. If it picks up that you own a business and you're the business owner, and then later you try to do a search within the same account and you try to see where you rank, it will rank you above everybody else. So don't get confused. You're going to have to use like a separate account or no account to try to run some rankings.
And I think that's where people in that scenario, that's where people can really understand these are 2 different things, right? Google is a search engine. We go there to find things, where ChatGPT does anything, I guess, to an extent, right? but that doesn't mean it's super good and specialized at something like search. It can do research and give you information, but it's different from a search engine, right? There's different factors at play. And like you said, some logic that's introduced there. And that logic is evolving, and maybe not, PhD level logic in some cases. It could be very elementary, or just grabbing some of the supplemental stuff and thinking it's more important than it is, right? In your example of, this is my business, so I should be number one. Well, not what I was looking for. So I think in this study that we're talking about, something for me that jumped out pretty easy is not that there's a direct correlation here or a guarantee, but being active on all these different platforms, social media, YouTube, again, like Yelp, not just putting your website out there, not just getting your GBP and having your content index, like you said, but also being in the spots that a legitimate and authoritative business would be in, right? Having a social media account, throwing some YouTube videos up. It doesn't guarantee results, but it seems like the companies that are in those places also are the ones that are winning. And that kind of makes sense from a logic standpoint, right?
Yeah, so this is a good point. And honestly, if you have like a holistic approach to SEO, it would still be something that you would have picked up as far as ranking factors on Google already. Now, maybe it was really only seen in the last year or two, but definitely I have a few clients. I know one in particular that I always think about, but as SEOs, a lot of times we look at maybe we get a new injury lawyer in a big city like Miami, and we have to give them some type of a projection. Typically, agencies, the way you do it is you look at the difference in content, you look at the difference in backlinks, what type of mentions they've gotten in the news or just online anywhere, and you try to estimate like how long it might take, how much money it might take to recreate that. I have a few clients where they don't just like the help that we provide is not the only thing that's in play with their campaign. Some of these clients, they do a lot in the community. They participate in, philanthropic events to get their name out there. They use that to take pictures to fuel their then social media, which they handle at a pretty high quality. They're not just, do you need an injury lawyer? Call them out. No, like they're putting something out there that will at least get fed into different community feeds, and maybe they get interaction. Yeah. They're spending money on ads. What, maybe not TV ads, some of them, yes, but maybe they get creative. They pay people to vinyl wrap their cars. They do all these things that now create a big presence where there's people searching them. There's people clicking through social media that's associated. And ultimately, Google can see your website doesn't just get traffic from like SEO. Like it's not just organic. So I guess my big point is, even over the last few years, the more you're doing as far as marketing, as far as your brand presence, that gives you a huge leg above everybody else. And then now it looks like on these big platforms, it's almost going to be like a requirement at this point to have a little bit more going on than just somebody putting content and ranking it on your website. So that's, it's getting tougher, I guess. And you can't just be an SEO, or if you are, you have to have, I guess, a pretty good team. But yeah, there are some clients that I've worked with that if you do analysis, any of the basic analysis, it does not make sense because they'll have like a fraction of as much. It looks like there's a fraction of as much being done, but they just rank above everybody because they're doing so much work outside of it.
Well, if you think about it, I think sometimes as SEO professionals, if you will, have the curse of knowledge that like marketing and doing well in search is just all about your website and those digital things, forgetting that these businesses that are in Google and ranking are actual brick and mortar businesses, real people interacting with other real people, doing things locally. And if we think about it now today, if we're doing a search for something, trying to find the best blank in blank city, well, that's more than just how you rank it in Google, right? That is, yeah. Are you part of the community? Or do you have people that like you? Are you getting mentions? It's not the exact same here, but we always tell people if you want 5-star reviews, right? Just talking about getting reviews in your GBP, you got to be a 5-star business. And I think in a parallel way, this is true here. If you want to be ranking and being found going forward digitally and all these different search platforms or AI tools, you just got to be a kick-ass business. You got to be out there. You got to be engaged doing things, and you can't just focus on manipulating a rank. Although this is important, right? You have to be strategic and optimize to battle against everybody else who is, but doing these things above and beyond that, just running a good business and being out there, talking for people locally. Yeah, it makes a difference. And I think that translates into, again, in this study, big brands, well-known brands get a lot of exposure. And if you just think about it, out in the ether, that exists for them already. They're just so well known from their brand legacy and all the different assets that are out there. Bring that down to a small local level. We have to recreate that, as business owners and marketers. We have to try to get ourselves as important locally as those big brands like Coca-Cola, and we just know it. It's just there. How can we do that for our brands, whether it be legal, right, or the phone repair shop or the flower shop or whatever? So, yeah, what's old is new again in some ways, but then also, it's not the hot trick, right, or the way to manipulate a certain thing. It's just doing good in all those areas. So
right. What was a trick last year is now becoming a requirement. And I don't know if trick is the right word, because ultimately you don't want to just kind of patchwork it. You don't want to, hire the cheapest freelancer you can. Because again, it's not about, am I posting, free estimates, call now. Like that's you got to put some effort into it too. But what was I going to say about? What was I going to say about that? No, yeah. Oh, right. So, as far as what last year was something to take advantage of, now is a requirement. I keep losing my train of thought.
Happens to me all the time.
Indexation.
There you go.
So, throughout time, Google has always increased the scrutiny, made it harder to keep all of your content indexed. It's always gone tougher and tougher and tougher. You used to be able to throw up anything at all and multiply it by hundreds, thousands, and it would index. That's obviously started to change way long ago, but it's almost like it's starting to speed up now. And maybe part of it to blame could be AI being introduced, because it's almost like too difficult to understand the scale of how much content is being dumped and pushed into Google every minute.
Yeah.
That all of a sudden, it costs a lot of money to go through this. It's very expensive. You need massive data centers everywhere just to get through all this content. No wonder they're just trying to save their costs on indexation. They tighten up the rules. Hey, it's not good enough anymore. We're just not going to crawl your entire website. We're just going to make inferences. We might crawl some pages, not index them. We might know that your page exists because it's on your sitemap, but we're not going to go through it. We're just going to make an assumption as to, hey, I think I know what's there and it's not good enough, so we're just not going to put it on Google. Right. So that it's getting tougher. Again, there's another wave of this being tightened up. So if you haven't already, it's a good time to go through, use something like Screaming Frog or some sort of tool to crawl your whole website. Go through all your content. Start, if you have to hire somebody, if it's a big enough website, to start going through the content. Maybe use AI for some of it too, to crawl through and give you a judgment. If you have pages that the topics are so loose in relevance that you're noticing that type of content is no longer indexed, start getting rid of stuff that is not good enough. Another thing is, if you were one of those people that would think that you just need to make a giant, very lengthy page to outrank people, obviously way back in the past, that would work. If you have pages that are super lengthy, or if you've ordered content from writers where you force them to meet a big word count, start going through your site. If you have to programmatically figure it out, but start all these massive pages, bring them down to just the actual answer, just the helpful, real good content, and cut out everything else. Because At least if you do that across your whole website, you're ensuring that you're maintaining just like the best quality across the board.
Yeah. It's an author I refer to a lot, Stephen Krug. He has a couple books. One of them is Don't Make Me Think. And I took a workshop of his years ago, and the exercise he had us do, which it's hitting me as you're saying this, and try to practice it a lot, is you write something, or maybe you're looking at your blog post from last year, right? Cut it in half without losing the guts, right? Cut it in half, read it, and try to cut it in half again, right? Go through that exercise of getting rid of the fluff, the extra words, and maybe you feel like you still need a long blog post or whatever. Okay, maybe the first third of the page at least do this, so people are, whether it be a Googlebot, an AI agent, or Victor or Jesse reading it, give us what we're looking for right away. Don't make us think. Just communicate clearly, and then you got me. I'm not bouncing out. I'm not going somewhere else. I might or might not read the rest of it here, but let's get to the point, right? I think you're very
don't be obscure and ambiguous. I know there's got to be lots of websites that are purposely ambiguous because they don't want to give you the info. They want to just get you to call. You don't want that, because if your whole website is ambiguous, that's a very easy way to just show to any search engine, don't even our content's not that good. You don't need to use this for your machine.
Right. We are not an authority for actual information here. Please move on. So you don't want to be in that
right. Yeah. And then, it also comes back to also like the writing team or whoever's writing the content, because, you can't have the tightest, most rigid rules. I imagine by now people are really loosening up the rules as far as how writers are supposed to write. There still is a world, obviously, of using tools that can tell you based on competitors what type of phrases, or at least what type of subheadings you should probably put in there. That also helps you with keyword grouping, so that if you need to split into another page, or if you're good combining a bunch of topics into one. But I imagine the rest of it, as far as word count, that probably starts to go out the window right now, where you have to leverage the actual skill of the writer to determine that on their own. I know a few English professors that I had where, when they assign the essays, everybody's quick to ask what the word count is. And they would get really upset, because it's like, all right, you're already going to produce something bad if you're worried about meeting the word count and not thinking about how long it really should be. So that's what I resort to as far as when we do the writer briefings for anything that we're ordering.
Well, I think like you talked earlier here is, like the informational, blog post or whatever. And that just hits on like, what's the intent? Like, why does this page or post exist? Is it answering a question? Is it providing some research information? Forget about the word count. Like, just make sure the information is there. It's on point for the intent. You're matching up what they're looking for with what you're providing. Get to that, and let them know they're in the right place. Whether they're reading that AI overview, just kind of not visiting your website yet, but just reading this and like, oh yeah, that's the stuff right there. I need to go to that company. Or if they are on your page or your social media, even, quite frankly, if we're pulling out snippets and sharing them on social, let's not bury the lead. Let's get people what they're looking for. If, I think there's an asterisk here, if you're interested in getting traffic from people searching, from being found, right? If you're a business where maybe you're pushing out TV commercials and you want somebody to go to your website, find the ambiguous information, and then take an action. Okay, that's a different model. But everybody listening and watching here, we're local business.
Well, I mean, you could do that on paid traffic.
True.
That still makes sense on paid traffic.
Right. Yeah. Whether it be a TV commercial or a paid social ad, whatever. You're right. There may be a model that works for you, but I think everybody tuning into us here right now today is trying to get found in search, right? And I think there's some great pointers there. I'm curious right now. I've got a few more questions here for you, if you don't mind. What would you recommend everybody, whether again you're in legal or not, what should they do right now to stay visible as AI search evolves? I know this may be a different answer next month, next week, or next year, but right now, just from general businesses knowing what they are and aren't doing, is there a single thing, not that it's going to rocket them to the moon, but is there a big thing you're seeing that they're not doing any number one tip you want to share?
I guess so. I have two things I would point out. The first one, I would say, you should have started your blogs years ago. So if you haven't, you probably should. But at least now, if you start it now, you can do it right. You can do it a quality way versus before, where it's kind of spammier the longer back you go. But if you have to do one thing across the board, if you don't already have somebody to coordinate the marketing, you got to have somebody. So now, if you're still a pretty small business, you can still rely on an agency to do this for you, especially if they have somebody internal that you can use for social media, for paid ads, for anything else that any design needs, any in-person flyers, all that stuff. But if you're starting to grow to, I don't know, 8 figures, by that point, you should be, whether you're a law firm, I guess, especially for a law firm, but you need to have somebody internal that's at least coordinating the marketing. And I say coordinate because maybe, you don't need an actual manager per se internal. Maybe it doesn't make sense to get an internal SEO. And some of these people are very expensive. PR, all that stuff is super expensive, but you do probably want to have somebody internal in your office that's coordinating them and also helping guide you with the in-person efforts, telling you, okay, well, for example, at the very least is, okay, we do really well for these queries on Google search. We already get tons of traffic for this particular service. If you're going to do your social media, if we're going to hire somebody to come in and record us doing videos that are a little bit nicer for social media or for an ad that we push out on TV or whatever, maybe don't do it on the same category that we already spent a bunch of money on. It's already performing really well. Let's go for another one, because then any presence, any searches that come from that effort now boost the ones that you're doing poorly on for organic. And there's a lot of tie-ins and crossovers that ultimately it's really nice to have somebody in person that can. The thing is, the business owners, by that point, you're really busy. You're probably, you probably shouldn't spend too much time on the marketing or jumping into meetings every month with your marketing team, your agency that you've hired. At that point, you need somebody else to be focused on that, because you as the business owner or you as one of the partners of the law firm, you've got other things to focus on, and you probably should be focused on those, on, like you said, having an actual superstar business. Right. Making sure you're going after every last person for reviews and getting your feedback so that the sales, the intake is all perfect and up to par. But yeah, consider somebody to help you coordinate this marketing, especially if you're not a marketer yourself. Don't try to do the job. You're an expert in something else. You should work on that.
Yep. I think it's great advice. We run into clients all the time for decades now where, as they scale up, they just do more, right? Or learn these things. And it's like, hey, before we engage with you, let's just say as an SEO, you weren't doing all these things. Why are you now? And you don't want to throw good money after bad. You want to, be strategic and efficient, right? Like you're saying, if there's a certain campaign you're going to do in one direction, does it make sense to mesh it with another one and collaborate? Are these two different buckets completely isolated? And then inversely, are you doing something, whether, let's say, a paid social ad, like, hey, there's nothing on our website. If somebody this is a great video, this is really sexy looking, it's getting a lot of attention. But if we're having them go to our website as the next step from that ad, and there's nothing on the website that ties it in or whatever, it's amazing how unaware some organizations can be when they're not really coordinating the overall marketing, like you're saying. That doesn't mean you have to push all the buttons and do all the work, but just thinking about where are you putting your budget and your energy, where are you getting your leads from, and how is this pumping the same flywheel? Instead of just being disjointed and inefficient in a lot of ways. I think, as we were talking through earlier, so much of this is connected now out there in the ether of digital search and things like this. You're bringing up I was expecting some hack or some trick or whatever, but you're just hitting like business basics, like make sure somebody's on top of this crap for you and I mean, that's like the A1 answer, I guess, if we really do think about it. So.
Well, as far as like actual fulfillment, I guess it's the blogs, I guess, because it's easy. Well, it should be. I guess it's the easiest thing I can think of. Everything else is, you can try to do your own outreach and get a link or two, but you're not going to be the person that every single month is being able to push out links. So
right.
That's my best advice.
And why do you mentioned it a few times, in this case, blog posts versus just a page on your website, like an inner page about a service or a product you're selling, just for everybody listening and watching, right? We're talking two different things here, even though they're both content on your website. You're preferring blog posts as some kind of a regular content generation versus inner pages. Or am I just hearing that?
Yeah, so it is. I guess I was assuming it would be under the assumption of you probably already have pages to cover all your services, but that's a good point. If you maybe put your own website together or hired like a really cheap freelancer to just throw something up really quickly, then you might be actually missing service pages. So definitely, yeah. So, and this is where if you have maybe like a franchise type of business, or if you're like multi-state, then it can come into strategy now where it's like, in 1 month, how many service pages do we add? How many blog posts? Because you don't want to go only service page. You don't want to go only blog posts. At that point, there's kind of like a healthy mix. So you might want to see how many service pages are we missing? How many should we have? And then kind of work your priority that way. Because the larger the website, also, I guess this is kind of insight from how we've built out a bunch of like multi-state type of law firms or even contractors like home improvement and stuff like that. It's if you go too fast with the service pages. So I'm talking about like you can, for most cities, at least any city with a good amount of population, you might have to spin out a separate unique service page just for that city. So you can see how if you're multi-state, all of a sudden it takes quite a lot of time to even organize which cities do we actually need to cover, which ones could be grouped into one, so on and so forth. But if you go too fast with producing all the service pages, you might run into that problem with indexation, which, if you're doing it yourself, maybe it doesn't matter too much because you can just kind of wait for Google to catch up and start liking what you put out. But if you're on a time crunch, if you're trying to rank now, or if you're a marketing agency like us and we have the clock running, now we have to be monitoring, okay, did we go too fast on content that's maybe not that valuable? Because what ends up happening if you go way too much on service pages and not enough informational to support that. So the informational ranks easier more often than not. It depends on your topics, but it ranks easier. So you can imagine you do both at the same time. The traffic that's coming in from the blog post is slowly adding to the authority, which is really important because links are very expensive. So even adding link building into the mix, you don't only do links. You got to push out the content. There's the different angles you got to do. But if you do too much of just service pages, you end up at some point, you'll notice Google starts to ignore the new pages that you put out. So there's a little bit of a take and give you have to do if you're increasing your authority and you're starting from very little. If you're starting from a lot of authority, you can go way more aggressive on the content build out.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. I hope everybody was kind of keeping up with that. Depending on where they're at, I guess, in the evolution of their business and their website, like to your point, maybe you need to have a mix back to where you originally were when I asked you, assuming somebody is built out in their services and locations, like all that's out there, then back to what you're saying, if there's a number one recommendation here, outside of having somebody in charge of your marketing in the eye on the ball, is put out great blog posts, right? Just keep putting out good content and using that however you can.
I have another point because I feel like a lot of people also would suggest just kind of blog posting.
Sure.
And it kind of leads, and then you might be misled into asking ChatGPT for your topics, which maybe for your first dozen or so topics, you might find some good ones, but that's not really the point. You want to use at least competitor research, right? So if you're an SEO and you don't know at all anything about a niche that you have to work on, it's pretty easy with competitor analysis. And even if you do, if you are an expert at, or if you're licensed in a type of law, practice of law, you yourself, even then, you should probably use competitor research first, because you'll at least know which topics are for sure going to bring you traffic, right? Yeah. But you don't want to stop there. So if you're doing your own blog posting, don't just stop there. Don't just use tools. If I look at all the law firms we work with, they're converting cases from queries that don't show up on any search tool, Ahrefs, SEMrush. Why? Because, they don't see everything. They see as much as people, however many users they have that are integrating their data. That's where, they can pull more and more data and get all this great info that we can see on the platform. But there are questions that your clients are asking you in the middle of the service, throughout the service, that you can go and answer via a blog post, and you'd be surprised you start getting some very easy traffic, because maybe that question was not on any SEO tool, so no marketer went and tried to build that topic, and then you just boom, number one right away and get traffic coming in.
Great point. And I think that's back to things like not using AI to just spit stuff out, copy and paste it. And what you're saying there's going to be some authenticity, and like the EAT signals and all this, like it's, even if the volume is not the greatest and it's not showing up on keyword research or other things for your topic, like you said, if people are asking this, if this is a real thing for your industry and for your clients and prospects, answer these questions, provide this information, good things are going to happen, right? So.
And especially with legal, like you can land a big case. It's very surprising when I see, this guy converted from, I wasn't sure if this was a valuable blog post. Like I didn't know anybody would ask such a specific question. But if people are starting to use AI more, they're going to be asking more specific questions. So there's only going to be more opportunities for you to get visibility with these changes.
I think we can all raise our hand to this too. Like as a searcher, the person looking for something, whether it be Google, chat, whatever, when you do have that specific question and you're like, I can't find this answer, I can't find my help. When you come upon it and find it, you're like, holy sweetness, this is the place. I trust these guys and gals, whatever, right? Like the equity that you then get as the company that provided that super niche answer or seemingly irrelevant tidbit. When the people come across that, it's great, right? It's great. You become not just a general authoritative entity on that topic. Like you're an expert now because you answered this question that nobody else was having. That's huge. That's huge. Even if it doesn't show up next week as giant traffic on your website, right? That's back to like you're talking earlier, more qualified. Like when people do come to you through these channels, this type of information, they're going to be hopefully your ideal prospects and client targets. So do you have anything else to add on that, Victor? Otherwise I got one more question here for you.
Not really. Amongst all my clients, everybody loves the organic leads the best. Right. Obviously we're a little bit biased, but you just kind of pointed out, if you just kind of like, if you naturally were positioned in front of that person that needed the service, it's a little bit more valuable. Or, well, I guess the salespeople have an easier time converting.
Yeah. It's a different relationship. You know what I mean? Like how the end user enters into it, the questions they have, the confidence they have. Yeah. It's a better model, which I always say, again, being biased, but organic search traffic, maybe outside of like a super warm referral, if your buddy just walks you into the door, you can't beat that organic. Okay. Kind of last question here for you, then we can start to wrap it up. With the shift towards AI search, right? Not talking about AI for using it as a tool for our business, for creating content, for research, but more of like as a parallel to Google search, right? In that sense, Is there something positive that businesses can look forward to as it becomes more integrated? Something you're mainly excited about as this evolves?
So excited about, I
That's
think
the wrong word.
no. I guess I'm not scared because I like what the developers are trying to build.
Okay.
So I would say what's exciting is we still see that focus from these developers on making sure that small brands can be discovered in some type of way. Maybe you can't afford link building. Maybe you can't afford public relations work. Maybe you can't afford the best writers to produce content really quick. But if you can leverage authenticity, uniqueness, anything, I guess, that makes your brand look better, maybe you can succeed in social media. Maybe you can succeed in getting mentioned that way. And then all of a sudden, you're at least getting fed into these platforms where, sure, maybe the most commercial searches you won't show up, but there is an expansion in the way people are searching. So there should still be plenty of opportunities, if not more, for you to still be seen. You'll just have to get a little bit more knowledgeable about the different avenues that there are. Don't be too quick to decide, I got to put out ads. A lot of lawyers, they go straight for, what about TV ads? What about this one? What radio? Don't be too quick. Get knowledgeable about all the avenues before you make your decision. But I think it's exciting, again, to just see that internally they do have a focus on making sure that users can still connect to the businesses and the local services that are actually doing a good job in their local area.
And kind of like we love to hate on Google, but kind of like, I mean, their MO is always trying to make sure the best results are provided for what people are searching for to connect them. We love to get pissed when a tactic or a trick doesn't work anymore and they clean up the SERP, but at the end of the day,
affiliate marketing, affiliate marketing as far as just ranking pages is kind of, it's already been decimated before.
Ain't like it was, that's for dang sure. But anybody I guess where that is working is they're spoofing or creating legitimate business too, right? Like it's a different version of what it was, and I don't know, it's a whole different creature, but
right, you could have done a very fake looking business just to convert leads. Now you have to go the full way, get a legitimate business, get your paperwork in place, so on and so forth. Which
from an end user standpoint, like, okay, that's good, right? I don't think anybody's upset about that if you're actually looking to patronize a business. So I think that was a ton of great stuff. Very valuable. Really appreciate your time. I do want for everybody listening, okay, we mentioned this earlier, but if you want to start tracking what actually matters, your rankings, search trends, visibility, let's talk about real quick, or real long too. I don't mean to sound like we don't have time, but TrackRight.
I won't ramble.
I love to ramble too. Don't worry. I haven't personally used it yet. I'm definitely going to check it out. I was reading on it before we were recording here. I'd love for you to give everybody a quick overview of what it is. I'm particularly curious about the feature to where, and maybe people are familiar with like a Bright Local or other search grids that have been out for a while. Correct me if I'm wrong on your product here, though. You can change. It doesn't have to be just this whatever 9x9 square that I'm trying to see what my local rankings are. Maybe two things to kick it off. If you could tell people what I even mean when I talk about a 9x9 square in my local rankings, just what like a GeoGrid is, and then how you can, I guess, manipulate the shape is maybe the right way to say it for the rankings.
Sure. Yeah. So there's, if you're doing any sort of research on local rank tracking, I think you would have already by now seen or heard of something called the GeoGrid, which is just like a map grid, a heat map type of thing. And different tools have tried to do different shapes also just to kind of stick out a little bit, especially because some people like to share screenshots, so they want to look a little bit unique. But regardless, you should have some level, even if it's just once a month. I do once a week, obviously, for any service queries, but I track the local rankings. So if you're a local business It can vary, but definitely with lawyers and most home service contractors, it can be up to 50% or more of the leads that you're converting. So let's say you're top ranked with your web pages and with your Google listing. 50% or more of the leads that you get from that visibility would come from just the listing itself. So definitely, if you're a local business, even if you're already doing very well, maybe you don't have to track as frequently, but you should be tracking how you rank across the map, because it varies significantly I would say even every like 100 feet, you're looking at a different position. And if your authority is low, if you're a newer business, your visibility, you can at least measure it and see how big it is, which it might not be as big as if you're getting a lot of traffic and you've built a lot of authority online. So even if you're a big business, you want to make sure that it's not dropping. But if you are working on increasing your SEO, like your performance right now, if you're with an agency or you're doing it yourself, definitely track the progress that you're making in the visibility with GeoGrids. So that's something that we can do on TrackRight, and that's like the primary feature, the one that's most built out right now. But we offer very affordable, I think it's like maybe 50% of the cost as other vendors that do the same thing, other SaaS companies. But we provide the automated GeoGrid tracking. That way you can have an accurate look of what you actually look like, and you can see how far you rank. And of course, you can do different shapes or you can do different sizes. I guess the rest of it kind of depends on what type of business you're working on as far as how much tracking you would do. But again, you can kind of maintain a good look, because one of the biggest things that might drop your rankings is if you're losing traction on your website, or if you go too long without new reviews, you'll start to see that ranking go down. So if you want to see how it plays out for your specific business, and if you want to see how well every other business around you ranks, you can use GeoGrids to do that. And you can run your own studies to see, did our new social media campaign influence our rankings, and all that kind of stuff.
Is it working? The big question always.
Yeah.
I do like on your website, you guys made an inference to this as well. And you just mentioned it kind of with not just your rankings, but looking at what the competition is doing. We talk to people all the time, whatever, like, so I'm up in the Minnesota Twin Cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul. Maybe somebody's based in St. Paul and they're like, I want to rank in Minneapolis too. It's like, okay, that's going to be almost impossible unless you have a lot of authority and everything else here. So maybe you look at a second location. Let's see what it's going to cost. Can you open up shop in Minneapolis as well? You guys mentioned on your website, and I tell people this all the time too, see where a good spot would be, and also inversely a bad spot. If there's 13 lawyers in that one shared office, get a few miles down the road from them, open up shop somewhere else. That's a great use.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because all of the other uses that come to mind are very specific, like, checking for the possum filter. Like you said, am I not showing because of my performance and my work online? Or is it because I accidentally set up shop in the same business as another business?
Right.
But like you said, so that's another really huge point where we start to really look at the GeoGrids, is whenever we are opening up a new location. So if you look at how far your rankings go out, you can then make sure that you're not just getting a location where you're already visible, because that would kind of be a waste of time, a huge waste of money at that point. Yep. Especially if you're signing like a year-long lease. So for many reasons, at least the clients that we work with, we always tell them you have to get your new office location approved by us. You do not want to make the mistake of just choosing a bad location, whether it's not properly labeled in Google, or there's other people there, or an old business still appears online with that address, so on and so forth. But you can accurately then see, okay, let's go. We got to go farther away from where the visibility is. And then depending on the competition, depending on how quick you can be with reviews and getting traffic in that city, then you might want to go a little bit farther out because you're anticipating, okay, well, if we can grow the radius this big, then let's push way farther out to that huge city out there so that we don't overlap and we're perfectly covering ground. And with TrackRight, you can, every geogrid that you pull, so the credits that you use for just one pull of a geogrid for one query, you can also select a different competitor that's ranking there and completely switch to view their rankings across a timeline.
Awesome.
So I told you it's automated. So for me, I have everything every week. So if sometimes my clients are like, hey, what are they doing? Or I think they're outranking us. They must have, their reviews must have been doing something or whatnot. They're like, can you look into it? I'm like, all right, perfect. I look at the timeline of when they started a new marketing effort and I switch my GeoGrid configuration to that competitor and I scroll through the timeline and see if it actually made an effect or not. So
That's
you can
awesome.
see how, and the more clients you have that are paying you to run the credits, you can imagine, even if you don't use the data right now, out of any major city for almost any legal practice type of case, I can go back like a few years into the past and see how everybody moved because I've been tracking all the clients. So you can actually harvest that data for yourself across all your competitors if you're doing that too.
Yeah. That's everybody listening and watching too. Hope they're paying attention on that. That's a whole different way to use it than just how am I ranking? And really at the end of the day, ranking, visibility, everything else, it's not just our efforts we're doing for our brand and our entity, but what's our competition doing? Are they trying to outflank us, right? If somebody was number one and dominant and here comes Victor, now he's crushing it. And you're like, yeah, this is amazing. Living in the lap of luxury. We're crushing it. This is great for our business. The guy or gal that was up there last month is not saying those things and is definitely working to come get you right now, flank you. So if they do, what worked, right? Like that insight, that level of competitive insight and matching up those timelines, that's pretty slick. That's pretty slick for everybody.
Well, if you're interested, check it out. It's trackright.com. You can do a free trial and it does preload GeoGrid's credit for you. So
Nice.
Not only can you just go in, run GeoGrid credits to see how you rank, but you have a good month or so that it allows you to use the rest of the platform. So if you're an agency and you're trying to connect, you can even connect your APIs to it so that you can manage your GBPs from it. You can connect tracking APIs so that you can use it as a hub for your tracking. We've even got AI transcriptions if you connect something like CallRail for your phone calls so that you can get short descriptions and not have to play through all your calls if you're going back and listening and labeling your leads. But
that's really
you can
slick.
do that. We label leads and then you get exports out of there. So tons of other features, but definitely check it out for GeoGrids, if not anything else.
Fantastic. And we'll link to that in the show notes for everybody too, but it's TrackRight. You can go find it yourself. Otherwise, we'll put a link here on the page as well. So this has been fantastic. Victor, is there anything else you want to impart on everybody, or should we wrap it
up? I think the takeaway would be one thing we mentioned was if you haven't already, because it might be difficult for you if you're not savvy, or maybe you're not using WordPress, so it's not as clear cut, but definitely worth investing right now into somebody that can come in and help you at least track everything that you're doing and gain good visibility on your internal performance, if not anything else. It's very important. You want to have internal data. You don't want to just rely on external data from SEO tools. You want to make sure that you know what's going on with your business. So if you haven't already hired somebody that can help you out, at least at a contractor level, definitely worth hiring an expert to help you with these things.
And that's the best part of digital marketing is the trackability, the analytics, and being able to look at these things, connect them all together. But there's no one magical thing to do that, right? You're going to have to bring in some talent and pull it together and then leverage it. So,
and stay on top of the news for development for all these tools, because any of this can change. So
it's changing, not can change. It is, and it's gonna, right? So there's always that evolution. Well, thanks again for your time, Victor. Everybody listening and watching, hopefully you took some notes on this. If not, start over. There's a lot of great nuggets in here. And Victor, we'll look forward to having you on the show again at some point to drop even more knowledge for everybody. So appreciate it.
For sure. I'd love to. Have a good one, everybody.